Here's another babysitting horror story, and how my babysitter almost killed me and my baby sister. So it first started when my parents hired a babysitter for us. At first she was really sweet, and then she started being really mean out of nowhere. She started hitting us when we would cry, and she would blow cigarette smoke in our face. One time when she was driving us home from the grocery store, my baby sister was crying really hard the whole entire car ride. When we got home, she got me out of the car and brought in the groceries, but she left my 2-year-old sister in the car. It was 103 degrees. And she left her in there. That's honestly when I first started becoming scared of her. But why I became terrified of her is because one time my parents went on vacation for like a week. And one night my babysitter ordered pizza. My parents sent the babysitter the money for it. It was for all of us, but she wanted to get anchovies on the pizza. I told her I didn't really want that, but she ordered it anyway. When the pizza came, I didn't really want to eat it. And instead of her being like, well, I'll just make you something else, she locked me into a room for 3 days. She would only let me out to use the bathroom, but I wasn't allowed to eat anything. After that, she made starving us a regular thing. Then my parents came back and took us to the hospital for a checkup, like for part 2. This is part 2 of my babysitting horror story. So like I said, my parents came back from vacation and took us to the hospital for a checkup. They took us to the hospital because they noticed we were getting really skinny. When we got to the hospital, the doctor said my 2-year-old baby sister only weighed 19 to 20 pounds. And I was 13 at the time. I only weighed 90 pounds. The look on my mom and dad's face was enough. So when we got back into the car, I finally told them about what the babysitter had been doing. Now hold on tight, because the way my mama reacted to this, you would have thought somebody possessed her. Immediately, my mom started going off on my dad, like yelling and screaming at him. And he just had his hands in his face. I was so confused as to what was going on. See, I didn't know my dad when I was younger. He passed away before I was born. And so I found out that my current dad at the time wasn't my real dad. And I didn't know the truth until this whole babysitting situation. She babysat me for like a month and then my parents fired her. I'm 23 now. I honestly could have forgotten all about her. Well, just last year, my mom told me that babysitter was my dad's ex-wife. Well, anyways, this is what my mom did to my stepdad's ex-wife after we went to the hospital. This is part 3 of my babysitting horror story. So like I said, I finally told my parents about what the babysitter had been doing to me and my baby sister. I was so confused as to why my mom started going off on my dad right away after I told her. But 10 years later, I'm finally finding out that my babysitter was my stepdad's ex-wife. My mom told me that she had been really iffy about letting my stepdad's ex-wife babysit me and my little sister, but she only agreed with it to save money. So my mom told my dad to get out of the driver's seat. She got into the driver's seat and she started driving. I wasn't exactly sure where we were going and my dad didn't know either, but we ended up at the babysitter's house. Luckily for her, she wasn't home because my mom would have dropped her. Shit, she might have even got a murder charge that day. But my mom told me to get a rock and to just start chucking them at her windows. So that's what I did. There, me and my mom were chucking rocks at my babysitter's window. And my dad was watching us holding my baby sister. My mom didn't take her to court or anything. I'm not exactly sure why. Probably something to do with my dad. But my mom made my dad cut contact with her completely and they fired her.
Story time about how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies that I met at the strip club. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent to me on Instagram. I have been a tripper for 2 years. And yes, I will be referring to myself as a tripper. A few months ago, I started looking for new ways to earn money because I don't want to be a tripper for the rest of my life. Well, around that time, a group of guys came into the club. One of them was super nice and he kept tipping me all night. He literally just talked to me the whole night. He didn't even get dances from other girls and didn't ask me to do anything else other than just talk. I basically made my entire rent just from all the tips he gave me. By the end of the night, he had asked me for my number and I gave it to him, which is super uncommon. I never give out my number, but this guy was really nice. A few days later, we went out to dinner and he asked me if I wanted to be his sugar baby. I said yes immediately. Ever since then, we hang out once a week, and he pays me on average $4,000 a month. A few months into our arrangement, he asked me if I wanted to quit the strip club. I said probably not, but he told me that eventually he wanted me to. A few weeks ago, this new guy comes into the club, and he also asked me to be his sugar baby, so I said yes. This is where things get scary. Part 2 of how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies I met at the trip club. Now I basically have to choose between one of them. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So this other guy comes into the club and asked me if I want to be a sugar baby. I immediately said yes. This man owned several businesses and everyone knew him around town. A week into our arrangement, he started becoming really jealous. He was constantly asking me if I had a boyfriend or if I had other sugar daddies. Of course I said no. That's when I realized I had to hide everything from both of these guys. Luckily, the second sugar daddy traveled a lot. He would FaceTime me all the time and even ask me to turn on my location. The only reason I put up with it was because he was giving me $7,000 a month. That's when sugar daddy number 1 asked me to quit the club again. And I basically said yes because I was getting enough money. I didn't realize it then, but he basically took that as me saying that I wanted to be in a relationship with him. That's when he started wanting to come over to my place all the time and basically spend every single day with me. So I would tell him I was going to the gym, but really I was going to go see my other sugar daddy. Then sugar daddy number 2 asked me if I wanted to move into a better apartment, and he became my co-signer. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies and I had to choose between one of them. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So sugar daddy number 2 offers me an apartment and wants to be my co-signer. And the apartment was so beautiful. It was 2 bedrooms, had a washer dryer inside the unit. It even had a doorman and a pool and everything. It was a huge step up from the place I had. This is when sugar daddy number 1 started getting really suspicious. He asked me how I could afford it. Then I broke the news to him that I had a second sugar daddy. He freaked out and told me I needed to choose between him or the other guy. I can't tell sugar daddy number 2 because he's super jealous, but my gut tells me to go with sugar daddy number 2. He pays me more money and gave me the apartment, but number 1 is super nice. But number 2 travels all the time, so I don't have to see him all the time. I don't know. What do you guys think I should do? I love my new apartment though. What do I do?
Am I wrong for wanting to tell my aunt that her husband is my dad? If you've read the title, then you can probably understand why my head is spinning so much right now. I, 19 female, and the product of my mom, 40 female, sleeping with her best friends Eve, 39 female, boyfriend turned husband Adam, 40 male. According to my mom, it only happened once, and they immediately regretted the act the next day when they were sober. They swore to never speak of this and continue living as if it never happened because they didn't want Eve to walk away from them. That's freaking selfish. Around the time that my mom got pregnant with me, the flu was going around, so when she first started feeling the symptoms of pregnancies, she assumed it was the flu. However, when the symptoms lasted for weeks, my Aunt Eve convinced her to go see a doctor and was with my mom when the doctors told her she was pregnant. Apparently, she was too far along to do anything else but have me, and Uncle Adam was upset when my mom changed her mind about adoption. It got to a point where Aunt Eve threatened to break up with him if Uncle Adam didn't stop telling my mom that she'd be a horrible mother. My mom had no family support, so Aunt Eve and her family were there for me and my mom a lot. Hence why I call her Aunt Eve, and she's even my godmother. I was a flower girl at Aunt Eve and Uncle Adam's wedding. I love my Aunt Eve very much and consider her a second mother. I was devastated when I found out the truth my mom privately confessed to me while she was drunk and didn't remember it the next morning. My mom tried to play it off, but I secretly took some of Uncle Adam's DNA and sent it in for testing. I angrily confronted my mom and told her what I did when she tried to deny it. Later on, Uncle Adam and my mom sat me down and apologized for what they've done, but since he was around as my uncle growing up, there was no real harm done and asked me to keep it a secret. When I showed hesitation, my mom brought up how awful Aunt Eve would feel, not only at her best friend's and husband's betrayal, but that she was able to give him the bio child Aunt Eve couldn't. My Aunt Eve survived cancer, but at the cost of her own fertility and struggled with therapy for years over it. I didn't want to hurt Aunt Eve, so I tearfully agreed. I've been holding on to the secret since Thanksgiving, and with Christmas rolling around, I know Aunt Eve is expecting me. My mom understands that this is a lot for me and will cover for me if I decide not to see or speak to Aunt Eve for a while, but honestly, I don't know if I'll ever be able to see her again. I don't know how I can spend the rest of our lives being around her and not eventually saying something. My mom said that it's a bad idea and that there's nothing positive to gain. She said that Uncle Adam has never had an interest in being my dad, so why would he be one to me if I reveal the secret and cause problems in his marriage? And that while Aunt Eve may still love me, there's no guarantee that she'll still want to be around me. I don't know what to do, so am I the asshole for wanting to tell?